Are you feeling isolated? Like a single puzzle piece that can't quite find its place in the bigger picture? In this crazy, fast-paced world, it's so easy to feel disconnected, right? To feel like you're shouting into the void. But what if I told you that feeling of being alone is a massive illusion? What if, beneath the surface of everything, lies an intricate web that links us all together? Today, we're diving deep into a powerful concept from Zen philosophy, interconnectedness. It's a journey of rediscovering the bonds that tie us to the world, to each other, and even to ourselves. Trust me, stick with me on this one. If you've been feeling lost at sea, this could be the compass you've been waiting for. Let's talk about Aiko. Imagine a beautiful, tranquil Japanese garden. Meticulously raked gravel, carefully placed stones, the gentle splash of a fountain. Aiko lives there. On the surface, its serenity defined. But beneath that surface, a profound loneliness lives. Since her husband Kenji passed away and her kids left to forge their own paths, she's felt like a lone leaf, ripped from the branch and tumbling through the wind. Her days are filled with routine, tending to the garden she once shared with Kenji. Now it's tinged with sadness. She observes life swirling around her, but feels utterly removed. The vibrant colors of her roses seem to taunt her quiet existence. The cheerful chirping of birds just emphasizes the echoing silence in her home. It's not that she doesn't have love or memories. On the contrary, her heart overflows with them. She loses herself in old photographs, each one a stark reminder of the connections that defined her. But the more she looks back, the sharper her current isolation feels. She makes polite small talk with neighbors, but the conversations feel shallow, lacking the deep understanding she shared with her family. It's like being stuck on an island, watching ships sail by, knowing they're there but unable to close the distance. Sound familiar? This isn't just Aiko's story, it's our story. In a world that celebrates independence and self-reliance, feeling disconnected is almost an epidemic. We build these walls, physical, emotional, mental, and then wonder why we're all alone. Aiko, bless her heart, is caught in that very trap, her grief amplifying her sense of separation. Intellectually, she knows she's part of the world, but her heart screams otherwise. She doesn't need another polite conversation. She needs a fundamental shift in perspective. Zen Buddhism teaches that this feeling of separation is the root of all suffering. We cling to the illusion of being a distinct self, separate from everything else, drawing lines where they just don't exist. Buddha taught us that our perception creates our reality, and if that perception is clouded by the belief in inherent separation, then isolation and unease become inevitable. This is Aiko's situation in a nutshell. She's focused on what she's lost, on the perceived emptiness, reinforcing that feeling of being utterly alone. But here's where things get interesting. Ancient wisdom, especially Zen, reveals a different truth. Everything is interconnected, interdependent, part of one seamless whole. Aiko's struggle isn't some bizarre anomaly, but a manifestation of a common human misperception. And the first step to breaking free is dismantling that illusion itself. Picture this. One crisp autumn afternoon, Aiko is sweeping fallen leaves from her garden path. A particular leaf catches her eye, a vibrant crimson, its edges just beginning to curl. As she holds it, a memory surfaces. Kenji, her beloved husband, used to say, "Look closely, Aiko. Even this single leaf isn't alone. It's connected to the tree, to the soil that nourishes it, to the sun that gives it life, to the rain that sustains it. It's part of something so much bigger." Back then, it was just a simple observation of nature. But now, in her solitude, those words hit with profound force. For the first time, Aiko truly sees the leaf not as a detached, dead thing, but as inextricably linked to the life of the maple tree. She traces those intricate veins, imagining the flow of nutrients that connected it to the roots, the trunk reaching for the sky, and the other leaves still clinging to their branches. And in that moment, something subtle begins to shift within her. The feeling of being utterly severed starts to soften, replaced by a faint whisper of connection. This is the first whisper of Zen's transformative power. We can't truly understand our place in the universe until we realize we were never separate to begin with. A few days later, she notices a tiny ant crawling across the vibrant crimson of that fallen leaf. The ant, seemingly insignificant, is interacting with the leaf, using it as a bridge, maybe an obstacle. And as Aiko watches this tiny drama unfold, a realization hits her like a ton of bricks. Even detached from the tree, the leaf isn't isolated. It's become part of the ant's world, an element in its immediate environment. This seemingly small observation sparks a major shift in Aiko's perception. She starts thinking about how even seemingly disparate things are constantly interacting and influencing each other. The boundary between the leaf and the ant wasn't absolute. For that one moment, they were connected in a shared experience. This observation echoes a core principle of Zen, the impermanence and interconnectedness of all things. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything is in a constant state of flux and relationship. Just as the leaf provided a path for the ant became part of the leaf's temporary story. Aiko starts extending this idea to her own life. Were the boundaries she perceived between herself and others, between herself and the world, really as solid as she thought? Maybe, like that leaf, she was still part of a larger ecosystem, even if the connections weren't immediately obvious. It wasn't a sudden rush of happiness, but a quiet contemplation, a gradual erosion of those rigid walls of isolation. She begins to wonder if the feeling of separation is a subjective experience, a trick of the mind that focuses on differences instead of the underlying unity. As spring arrives, Aiko throws herself into tending her roses, a task that brings her a quiet sense of purpose. One warm afternoon, while pruning a thorny stem, a bright red ladybug lands gently on a velvety petal of a newly opened bloom. Aiko pauses, captivated by the tiny creature. The ladybug, with its delicate spots, seems perfectly at home on the rose, a miniature jewel adorning nature's artistry. And in that moment, the words of a Zen master she once read come flooding back to her. The universe is not outside of you. The interconnectedness of all things is not an abstract concept. It is a living reality. As she observes the ladybug, the rose, the soil beneath her fingers, the warmth of the sun on her skin, the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves, a profound sense of interconnectedness washes over her. She understands, not just intellectually, but viscerally, that she's part of this intricate web of life, no more and no less significant than the ladybug or the rose. That early whisper of connection she felt with the fallen leaf blossoms into a comprehensive understanding. The ladybug depends on the rose for shelter, the rose depends on the soil and sunlight, and Aiko, the caretaker, is also part of this delicate balance. The feeling of being a solitary entity starts to dissolve, replaced by a sense of belonging to something vast and beautiful. She sees herself not as a detached observer, but as an active participant in the ongoing dance of existence. Her grief hasn't disappeared, but it's now accompanied by a sense of being held within a larger embrace. The emptiness feels less like a void and more like a space within a greater wholeness. It's a key insight in Zen. Recognizing that you are not separate from the universe, but an integral part of it, can profoundly alleviate feelings of isolation and suffering. But even with this growing connection to the natural world, Aiko still feels pangs of loneliness when she thinks of her family. One evening, while reflecting on these feelings, she remembers another teaching from Zen philosophy. Suffering arises from attachment to the illusion of a permanent, separate self. And it hits her. Is her loneliness not a form of attachment to the way things used to be, to the constant presence of her husband and children? Is she clinging to the idea of a separate Aiko who is somehow incomplete without them? This leads her to a crucial realization. It is important to realize that suffering is something you create yourself, that your own mind and heart create it. It is important to realize that you yourself are creating it. Aiko understands that her loneliness, her self-imposed isolation, isn't an inherent condition, but a perception created by her own mind. Her mind is clinging to the past and resisting the present reality. This is a profound and empowering realization. If her suffering is self-created, then she also has the power to uncreate it. This doesn't mean denying her grief or her longing for her family, but shifting her perspective, recognizing that even in their absence, she's still connected to them through love and memory, and more importantly, connected to that vast, interconnected web of existence. The feeling of being a separate, isolated entity is an illusion, a construct of her own mind. Boom. With this deeper understanding, Aiko's actions start to reflect her changing inner landscape. Instead of retreating further into solitude, she feels a gentle pull towards connection. Remembering the joy she once found in sharing her garden, she decides to join a local gardening club. Initially, she feels apprehensive, but the memory of the interconnectedness she witnessed in her garden gives her courage. At the club meetings, she discovers a community of like-minded people who share her passion for nurturing life. She shares her knowledge of roses, learns new gardening techniques, and for the first time in a long time, she feels a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose. Inspired by this, Aiko starts volunteering at a nearby nature center, helping to maintain the trails and educate visitors about the local flora and fauna. Working alongside others who are dedicated to preserving the natural world further reinforces her sense of interconnectedness. She feels a sense of purpose in contributing to something larger than herself, in being an active part of the ecosystem she's come to appreciate so deeply. Through these actions, Aiko isn't trying to replace the connections she's lost, but rather expanding her circle, embracing the understanding that she was never truly alone. The feeling of loneliness doesn't vanish completely, but it no longer holds the same power over her. It's now tempered by a deep sense of belonging to that interconnected web of life. Just like the solitary leaf that's still connected to the tree, the ant that interacts with the leaf, and the ladybug that finds its place on the rose, Aiko realizes that even in moments of apparent solitude, she's part of something larger, something whole. Her journey wasn't about finding external connections to fill a void, but about recognizing the inherent interconnectedness that had always been there, obscured only by the illusion of separation. Zen teaches us that by seeing beyond this illusion, we can find a profound sense of peace, belonging, and purpose in the intricate tapestry of existence. Now, let's get real for a second. Where do you find yourself right now? Ever feel like that lone leaf, tumbling through the air, cut off from everything that matters? Maybe, just maybe, it's time to sharpen your vision, to really see the invisible cords that bind you to the universe. Start simple. Carve out a moment of absolute stillness. Don't just look at the world around you, immerse yourself in it. Not as a spectator, but as a vital organ within a living, breathing body. Acknowledge that each breath, each fleeting encounter, is a shimmering strand in the cosmic web that holds us all. If this resonated with you, if Aiko's journey offered a glimpse of a more connected way of being, then I invite you to join our growing community here at the Moon Mind Temple. Subscribe for more insights into the wisdom of Zen and practical ways to cultivate inner peace and connection in your own life. And be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. What are your experiences with feeling connected or disconnected? Let's learn and grow together on this path of recognizing the profound interconnectedness of everything. Your journey towards understanding begins now.